Buongiorno tutti. I'd like to thank Stefano Lulli and his organizers for putting together this fantastic conference and also for allowing me to be a part of this conference. It's always nice to visit Italy, and it's particularly nice to come when the cherries are ripe. So I'm very honored to be able to join you here today. My goal this morning is really to help set the stage for many of the following talks. I have a short time. The other talks will have even shorter time, but they will be able to probe cherry production in very fine detail. So my goal is to help you think critically about many of the talks you're going to hear and to understand how to best utilize some of the new ideas and research and technologies that I think are really going to dramatically alter cherry production in the very near future. We already see some dramatic changes, and I'm trying to give you the basis this morning for understanding how to use those changes. So to be competitive in sweet cherry production now in 2011, you must plant varieties with the genetic potential for high fruit quality. Fruit quality drives the economic return for growers. And by fruit quality, we mean the fruit must be large. That is what is the standard for competing internationally. But it must have good flavor. The fruit must taste good so that people come back and continue to buy cherries and are willing to pay very good prices for them. And the fruit must be very firm so that it can be shipped out of the country to other states, to where the people are paying good money for the fruit. For growers then, to produce quality fruit, we must optimize our orchard management to not only produce that quality fruit, but to make our orchard tasks more efficient with the increasing costs of labor and materials and energy. So efficiency is an equal part of being competitive in world cherry production. I want to start with showing just a few pictures and information about work that we are doing in Michigan to set the stage for how we are integrating many technologies and ideas to lead our industry into the future. We are working in Michigan with high tunnels to protect from the rain. We have more rain even than Bologna, hard to believe. We have winters that we need to protect against. So we use these tunnels to help in the spring with frost problems. We find that by reducing or preventing the rain, we can improve insect control and disease control, and we can change the ripening time to meet a more attractive market. So we are using Gisela 5 on a sandy soil in this area. 10 years ago, we thought you could never use Gisela 5 on a sandy soil. But because we have learned now how to irrigate, how to manage the trees through pruning, how to promote vigor through fertilization, we have increased our abilities to grow dwarfing cherries on poor soils. Here is some of the fruit from last year. Variety Ebony Pearl, harvested on the 11th of June, 32 millimeters. Benton, 36 millimeters. Rainier, 36 millimeters. Burgundy Pearl, 35 millimeters. 10 years ago in Michigan, we were producing fruits that were 24 millimeters, very small, on standard trees. Now we understand how to produce dwarf trees and very good fruit quality. This is from our results last year, all of the different varieties in our high tunnels, the average fruit size for all of the fruit. Black Pearl, 10 grams, Ebony Pearl, 11 grams, Sandra Rose, 13 and a half, Burgundy Pearl, Rainier, 14, Skeena, 14 and a half, Benton, 15 grams on average. The yields were a little bit lighter, but the production overall was extremely impressive. So how do we do that? We choose those best varieties, those varieties with the big fruit size, good firmness, and good yields. We match them to rootstocks that will produce good yields quickly. And we have learned that the Gisela rootstocks have very limited root zones, and that changes dramatically how we must manage those orchards. Orchards on a dwarfing, precocious rootstock must be managed entirely differently than orchards on a vigorous seedling or colt type rootstock. Therefore, this intensive management for us requires high irrigation frequency, particularly on sandy soil. We used to think high frequency was every other day. Our philosophy now is irrigating multiple times through the day for very short periods so that the tree never becomes under stress. We also fertigate very frequently. Rather than applying fertilizer once in the spring, once after harvest, we'll fertilize a little bit every week because these small root systems must have that available nutrient in the small rooting zone. And when you do this, you get very good production. We've started to understand the basic fruiting unit physiology of the sweet cherry. We've gone from a chaotic, large, 4-meter tall tree to thinking about cherry as a single fruiting unit. This unit that we focus on has new growth with single leaves, one at every node this year. What grew last year has now 6 to 8 leaves at every node, and we have a little bit of fruit, non-spur fruit, at the base of last year's growth. There are no vegetative buds here. These are the vegetative buds which have no flowers. So we have solo fruit buds and solo vegetative buds. Then on the 2-year-old growth, we have 7 to 9 leaves at every node, and we have fruit clusters at most of those nodes. These fruiting sites increase in density terminally, so we have a greater crop load towards the terminal of that section of fruit. And we have more flower buds per spur at this part of the branch than at this part of the branch. So understanding this basic fruiting unit is critical for managing crop load, and it changes how we prune and train our trees. It dictates what we must understand as we adapt new training systems. And so the rest of my talk is going to focus on some of the new training systems and how, when we keep this single fruiting unit in our minds, it helps us to successfully adopt these new technologies. We've learned a lot about physiology in the last 10 years. A student of mine, Marlene Ayala, who is now in Chile at the Catholic University of Santiago, did some very interesting work using carbon dioxide that we could provide to individual populations of leaves. The new growth, last year's growth, the non-fruiting spurs, or the previous year's growth, the fruiting spurs. And we could track the carbon that was photosynthesized to see where the carbon was moving into these fruit from, how these different populations of leaves influenced obtaining high-quality fruit. So this was a huge amount of work. I show you 2 slides in my short time, just to show a little bit of the data. This data was taken at the beginning of stage 3 of fruit growth, that is 44 days after full bloom. The fruit was at about 25% of its final size, just changing color. The shoots had about 16 new leaves at this time. When we looked at the carbon moving from the new shoots, last year's spurs, and the fruiting spurs, we found that at this time, 55% of the carbon coming into the fruit was coming from the fruiting spur leaves. 29% came from the non-fruiting spur leaves, and 16% came from the new shoots. So we need to keep in mind the leaf area closest to the fruit is critical for achieving the largest quality fruit. So large leaf size close to the fruiting clusters is critical to achieve maximum size, firmness, and sweetness. So as we investigate new training systems, we must always look at maximizing the leaf size and leaf area next to the fruit wherever it is being born in these systems.